You can design project approval forms and approval workflow through the Form Designer and Workflow Designer. The approval process can be managed and monitored through Yeeflow's workflow management capabilities. In the previous section, we covered how to create an approval form. Next, we added the fields on the application form and configured the relevant business logic. First, open the application form created earlier in the project approval form and enter the Form Designer. On the left-hand side, under the basic fields grouping, find text box, select and drag and drop it under the divider control you added earlier. Under Content Settings in the Control Properties settings, to the right of the variable information under the Associated Variable option, click the Edit button to open the Associated Variable Settings window. Set the field ID to Field Project Name and the field name to Project Name and click the OK button. Click and expand the Validation Settings grouping and turn on the required option to make this field mandatory. Then click the plus button in the top left corner to open the list of controls. In the General grouping, find and drag the grid control into the canvas. In the Control Properties panel, under Content Settings, expand the Appearance Settings group, and to the right of Column Settings, click the plus button to add a new column, thus setting the grid to 2 columns. Find the Display Caption setting at the bottom and turn off to hide the caption. Next, under the Basic Fields grouping in the Controls panel, click and drag the data picker controls into this grid and change the field ID and field name to field Start Date and Start Date. Turn on the required option to set this field as mandatory. Right-click the Start Date control and select Duplicate from the context menu. Change the new Date Picker controls field ID and field name to field End Date and End Date. Normally, a project's end date should not be earlier than the start date. We can use the custom verification function of Yeeflow to add validation logic. Select the End Date control and under Content Settings, expand the Validation Settings group. Click the Custom Validation button in the Custom Validation window Rule Settings, click the right button, open the Expression Editor window. Click the Functions button at the top, select Date Diff from the list of functions and click the Insert button. Position your mouse cursor to the first parameter of this function, then click the Expression button in the top toolbar, and in the pop-up window, select the workflow variables, find and select the end date in the expanded list, and click the Insert button. Next, move the cursor to the second parameter and set this parameter to the start date in the workflow variables. The third parameter is day. Select the greater than or equal to button in the top toolbar, and add this condition to the Date Diff function. Then select the number button and enter 0 the number input box. Secondly, click the Settings button of Error Message to open the Expression Editor. Click on the Text button on the top toolbar and add a text input box where you can add the content of the message that will pop up if the condition is wrong. The end date must come after the start date. Then click on the OK button in the Custom Validation window to complete the custom validation settings. You can test this custom validation feature by clicking on the Preview button. Next, in the list of controls on the left, find and drag a text area field control into the canvas and change the field ID and field name to field Brief Introduction and Brief Introduction, respectively. Click on the plus button in the top left corner of the designer, switch to the Page Properties settings, expand the Appearance Settings group, and change default title field alignment for vertical. In the process of project approval, the approver will focus on the cost, profit rate, and other indicators of the project. Next, we will add relevant business logic to the application form. Find and drag a new grid control from the list of controls onto the canvas and change the title text to Financial Information. In the Appearance Settings group, click the Add Column button to set the grid to 3 columns. Add a currency control to the grid and change the field ID and field name to field Contract Price and Contract Price, respectively, making the field mandatory. Add another currency control and change the field ID and field name of the control to field Estimate Cost and Estimated Cost, making it mandatory. In the list of controls, under the Basic Fields grouping, find the Calculation control and drag it to the third column of the grid. In the Basic Settings group, change the field ID and field name to field Rate of Profit and Rate of Profit. In the Expression Setting area below, click on the Edit button on the right side to open the Expression Editor. Set the expression and click on the OK button. You can test the calculation of this calculated value by clicking on the Preview button. Once everything is set up, click the Save button in the top right corner of the designer to save all the settings for this form. Through the above steps, we have completed the design of the application form. In the next section, we'll talk about how to design a business process with the Workflow Designer. Thanks for watching.